Okay, our next big group, and when I say big group, what I really should have said earlier was this word phylum. So all of these animals we've talked about so far belong to different phyla. So there was phyla Cnidaria, phyla Porifera, that was the sponges, phylum Platyhelminths, that's the flatworms, phylum Nematoda, phylum Arthropoda, and now we're on phylum Mollusca, so the mollusks. And the typical molluscan body plan has these three basic parts. It's got a mantle, which secretes a shell, a muscular foot, and a visceral mass. So if I were to circle all these, the mantle would be like this purple layer that gives rise then, or that secretes the shell. So this would be the mantle. This is a generalized mollusk, and this would be the shell that is secreted by the mantle. And then this would be the foot in here. And then this whole kind of region here would be called the visceral mass. So go ahead and label that also on your notes. You have this image, and so you can add that in here. And then a lot of mollusks have what's called a radula, which is this, and it's sort of a close-up of this little area here. This radula is a scraping tongue. It has sharp, kind of razor-like spines on it that can scrape away. And one thing that's really cool about a radula is that it can make these really symmetrical holes. So I don't know if you can see, this is a clamshell, but in the middle of this clamshell is a little hole that was bored by a gastropod that had a radula, and it just scraped away this perfect symmetrical hole. So this is called a moon snail. That's the animal that made the hole is called the moon snail, but it made it on a bivalve, which is kind of cool because these are two mollusks in one, representing two mollusks in one little specimen here that I found once on a beach. Okay, so that's the scraping tongue that slowly scrapes away, and then the bivalve has a clam in the middle of it that then the gastropod can kind of insert digestive juices and digest the body of the bivalve alive. So next time you go to a beach, look for clamshells that have that perfect symmetrical hole in them, and you can then know what happened to that clam. Mollusks have shells for two main reasons, and both of them are to do with protection. And so, this little bivalve shell, the goal of it, if it had a goal, was to protect the tender animal inside from predation. It didn't actually work very well. This is a gastropod here whose shell is probably much more effective at protecting it from predation. It's so thick. And it's got these spines, and so it's hard for a predator to kind of get in here. But there's another reason that mollusks have shells, and so these here are limpets, and limpets often are above the water level in a tide pool. So limpets' shells protect them from, what do you think? If they're above the water level, they protect from, yes, you're right, drying out when the water level has receded in a tide pool. Okay, so predation is one, and then drying out is the other. So protecting from predation and from drying out. There are three main groups of mollusks. We've already met two of them. These are the snails, and snails are not just garden snails, but like this is a marine snail. Here is another kind of gastropod with a coiled shell. That when you think of snails, you think of the coiled shells. This is the inside of a gastropod's coiled shell, kind of a cool little spiral staircase. So those are the gastropods, and what that word means is stomach foot. They're basically just a foot and a stomach and a shell. Gastropods. These have two shells that close up together, and so here is one that I happen to have from the little shell collection that I inherited. These are, because there's two, and these are cockles, and so they're called bivalves. Bivalves. Here's one half of a bivalve from an oyster. There would be another half as well. So these are the bivalves, meaning two shells. And then the last group of mollusks are the cephalopods. When I say last, I just mean last that we're going to deal with. Cephalopods, which literally means like head foot. These are famous for being really intelligent. So like what we've got shown in the slide here is a chambered nautilus, and then this is a fossil ammonite, which is sort of a distant relative of these chambered nautiloids. And this is a straight nautilus that doesn't have a coiled shell. So they didn't all have coiled shells. These are from probably a couple 100 million years ago or so. And so nautiloids, these are extinct, but their relatives kind of live on in the nautiloids. Okay. And the more familiar ones are the octopus and the squid. And the videos that you're going to watch talk to you about octopus and squid in the cephalopods. Very intelligent, famous for getting out of aquaria in any way possible. And so the next slide has all the videos that I want you to watch on each of these major groups, a gastropod, a bivalve, and a cephalopod. Watch those videos, answer the questions, and then we will regroup to talk about our next phylum, which is the phylum Annelida, the annelids, the segmented worms. So we'll see you back after you've watched those videos.